Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Hi, Rob Browne here with you on this Friday morning. Wow, here it is, August 4th, man. Football practice fully underway across the South, around the country. September 2nd, we are 29 days away from the first really stacked weekend. We know we'll have some oddball games the week before that, and then the Thursday night. They count. They do, I promise you. But it won't be a fully engaged weekend. We are here, Sidelines, 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday morning, 8 to 10 a.m. Central. You can also follow us on Twitter at Sidelines_live. Look, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Love to have you do that. It is youtube.com/at Sidelines_live. All right. And you can also support this show by being a Patreon sponsor. It's all on the website, www.sidelines.live. College football happening really fast. I want to say something about, I think where we're going with NIL and the portal is it's fixing itself right before our eyes. You're not seeing mass sit-downs. You're not seeing mass sit-downs by football teams or basketball teams because they didn't get their NIL. The free market is working this stuff out because, again, as a financial advisor in wealth management since May of 91, I've got a pretty good bead on this stuff, pretty good read. I've yet to come across a client that has a pile of money ever give it out to their teenage children, ever, in 32 years. And I've had a few meetings. So if you think that all these college sports fans are out there lining up in line with other people to just throw money at the wind, you're out of your mind. And this generation that thinks everything's got to be perfect, I got to have it my way. It's my day. Get out of here. Kiss my brass. You know what? Life happens. Will Gunter, you know damn well what I'm talking about. You're a coach. You got more cool stories. You know more about Ja Morant than most people in Memphis do. And talk about loyalty and being a hardcore fan. 107.5, The Game in Columbia, South Carolina. 80,000 plus Williams-Brice Stadium since I can remember. Listening to Bob Fulton, the voice of South Carolina football, and George Rogers going back to Joe Morrison, Jim Carlin. And then you think of what Steve Spurrier did. Well, South Carolina, one of the most interesting stories in college football of always, what can they be? By God, if Clemson can do it, I know they're in the ACC. Why can't South Carolina do it more consistently? Is there about to be a changing of the guard? Y'all beat Clemson last year, broke a 41-game home winning streak. Clemson hadn't lost at home since 2016. Let's get started. I wish we could do that rooster call right now, but how fired up are people down there in Columbia about year 3 of Shane Beamer?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're very fired up. It's actually fall camp. I got to stop saying it. It's not fall here. 95. So accustomed. I've had a hard time. Preseason camp gets started today. They reported yesterday and had another talking session. Nothing new was said, but they're actually 9:00 my time. Will be taking the field here within the next 30 minutes if they're not already on the field or trickling out. And there's expectations for this season, but I think that also there's a level of uneasiness because look, those two wins were great. Tennessee and Clemson were great wins. There's no doubt about it. But there was also some really ugly losses to Missouri and Florida, and there have been some ugly losses before. And so there's a lot of excitement, I think, overall, especially when you factor in what just happened this week with South Carolina landing the number 10 player in the country and Dylan Stewart. I think there's excitement for the season, but there's excitement long term because I think a program like South Carolina benefits from the expanded college football playoff with the right guy. Obviously, maybe I don't know if South Carolina would have ever gotten into one of the top 4 seeds. That mountain of a climb was really steep. Now all of a sudden you've chopped off a little bit of the mountain. Even if you're bringing Oklahoma and Texas in, the opportunity to get into the college football playoff is a little bit easier these days. And so with that being said, I think the excitement for the overall program, the direction of the program, not just 2023, is great.
I do too. And I like the 12-team playoff because, Will, you and I remembered what the NCAA basketball tournament used to be. I mean, we're not old enough to remember when it was 8 teams or maybe 16 teams really much, but when they went to 32 and then 48, 64, all it's done is just create more interest. And in 1984, the landmark lawsuit, Georgia and Oklahoma sued Chuck Ninus, the College Football Association. All that stuff happened. Basically, we want more games on TV. Well, you go back to the 1950s. Well, we're putting college football on TV. Well, nobody will go to the games. Well, once people saw it on TV, they go, hell, I want to be there. That's what happened in 1984. Every stadium in America has expanded multiple times since then. Going from 4 to 12 in the month of November, everybody in the top 25, top 30 is thinking kind of Dumb and Dumber here. So you're saying there's a chance we can make it to the college football playoff. That is nothing but a great thing for sports fans, Will Gunter.
Yeah, I think we'll all be interested to see how it shakes out, right? Like how does the first year look? I mean, obviously, let's look at what's happening right now. I don't know, by Sunday, is there going to be such a thing as the Pac-12 anymore? You're consolidating to the Big Ten and probably to the SEC, with the Big 12 kind of still hanging out there. Is it an NFC, AFC type deal where you've also got a third conference? How does it look getting into these playoffs? We're all excited about it until it happens, and we're all excited about it until it happens, and it's 6 conference champions, and then 3 Big 10 and 3 SEC, and you go, wait a minute, I want to see a little bit of the Big 12. I'm excited for it, but I'm more interested to see how we go, because there's going to be errors here. There's going to be mistakes made. There's going to be debate that's had, and debate is great. But the first few years, I think, as we continue to watch college football realignment, I do think what's interesting is, I always thought, I've always said on my radio show, by 2030, feels like some kind of apocalyptic movie that I'm talking about here or whatever. But by 2030, you're going to have the new era of college football. Well, now it looks like, you look at what happened with Colorado. You look at what's been in the news this week with Arizona and Arizona State, and obviously Oregon and Washington. It looks like the new era of college football is actually going to be 2024, 2025. Like we've shifted the time frame up so drastically. So it'll be cool, but I think there's still going to be a feeling out process of, okay, what does this look like for college football?
Yeah. Now, when Colorado went to the Big 12, back to the Big 12, that did not surprise me at all. Utah and BYU, 42 miles apart. I don't think they really care much for each other. It's called the Holy War. It's a great rivalry, but BYU is going to do everything they can to keep Utah out of that conference. It wasn't that long ago that Utah was a member of the Mountain West Conference. Now they're going to switch again and maybe go to the Big 12. But the sad part of it is the old saying, Scrammy Wade said it best, piss poor planning and lack of preparation lead to piss poor performance. Larry Scott drove the Pac-12 to the edge of the cliff, and it looks like George Kliavkoff is driving the car to finish the job off the cliff. I can't believe that. With all the tradition, Southern Cal, UCLA already gone to the Big Ten. They can't do any better than that. You know what the problem is? California is where dreams go to die. And that's not what we're looking at for the rest of the country. They're doing it ass backwards. Cal and Stanford, what about them? It's not just football. They're good in a lot of sports. They're choking out there. and Nobody has stepped up with a vision. You got Vinny Barbarino from the Greaser, the governor. He's done nothing. Every other state, the governor steps up and will take a leadership role to try to save sports in their state. And all that's happening is people are leaving. It's the reverse of the grapes of wrath?
Well, this started I 11 years ago. Is that right? With Missouri and Texas A&M.
Yeah, 2012.
With Nebraska going to the Big Ten. And give credit to certain commissioners for having the foresight to see where this was going. It's not easy. I mean, there's people who have thought that they were on the cutting edge. Are we still doing crypto mining and Bitcoin? What was the Super Bowl ad 2 years ago that everybody was supposed to jump into? And I guess the point is, like, you take chances, you take risks. The Pac-12 stood still, and there's really, here's the other thing. Out west, what other, like Boise State? They tried to look at San Diego State. They missed their opportunity. I know there was some issues with BYU back in the day. It's just you have to kind of have foresight in college football. Roy Kramer to Greg Sankey, the whole line here. I've blanked on the commissioner in between Roy Sankey and Greg, or excuse me,
Mike
between Roy
Slive.
Kramer and Mike Slive. Thank you. I just completely blanked on his name.
Yeah. Oh, you've been up since about 4.
Yeah, whatever it's been, you've had guys with vision of where this conference. I mean, go back. Roy Kramer. I've watched these documentaries on his TV back behind me here of Roy Kramer saying we're going to do a college football playoff because here's what it is in 1992, and Steve Spurrier's going, this is an awful idea. This is going to kill our conference. We're never going to win national championships. Well, okay, Steve Spurrier was completely wrong. Roy Kramer is a genius. It's just you see how the game is evolving and your mind moves faster. And to your point, Larry Scott just killed the Pac-12 with no future vision. Well, if you have no future vision, you leave the next guy nothing. And George Kliavkoff, he kind of got left with nothing. And it's like, all right, do the best you can. And everybody was already 3 steps ahead of him. By the time he gets in there, really gets his hands around the situation, it's blown up. And now the best he can get is Apple TV. I'll also say this is funny. What 24 months ago, was it that long that we thought the Big 12 was dead and they were all going to the Pac-12? And it's a dog-eat-dog world. Look, the Big Ten stabbed. The Big Ten looks at the ACC and Pac-12 and goes, hey, guys, I got an idea. I got this neat idea. We don't like what the SEC is doing, so we're going to stick it to the SEC. We're going to form the alliance. We're all in, right? We're going to form the alliance. And this is our way of, man, we're going to hammer the SEC. And then a year later, the Big Ten goes, hey, Pac-12, I know we're in an alliance, but we're taking your two biggest name programs, and they're coming with us. And all of a sudden, the Pac-12 just it's the mafia. It's the Sopranos. Hey, I'm sorry, I'm taking what's yours. It's coming to be with me.
Yeah.
And that's what you've seen now is it's dog eat dog. And hey, the Big 12, the Big 12 jumping in saying it's survival of the fittest, man. Sorry.
Well, you're right. You're great point, Will Gunter. 2 years ago, I'm in Birmingham at Media Days. You probably were there too. When OU and Texas, that was already a done deal. They wouldn't have announced it. I told someone, I said, that's already done. That's not even up for vote. They wouldn't have said it if it wasn't done. Now, we did. We heard, well, the Pac-12 is going to grab everybody. Remember Governor Ann Richards of Texas had to step in and keep a lot of Texas schools from going to the Pac-12. And it's completely reversed. And they have nobody to blame but themselves. And I hate to see it, but, there's a great term that the Romans would use. Fortune favors the brave. Go back in the summer of 2020. The Big Ten followed the lead of the Mid-America Conference. And the Pac-12, was even more of a chicken split, okay? They were all scared, okay? Being scared is not a strategy, but that's what they did. And they tried to cancel football, and then they barely played it. And because Ohio State has minders everywhere, in the media and everywhere, playing 5 games, somehow they got into the college football playoff when they played Alabama for the national championship game. But let's be completely honest here. They were nothing more than the Washington Generals in that game against the Harlem Globetrotters. They were just, cannon fodder. That's all they were. But the lack of courage shown by the Pac-12 to save that league, it's pathetic. But it's also symptomatic of, their headquarters is in San Francisco. that idiot had them paying $8 million a year for the lease of the conference office. And again, famously, Randolph and Mortimer Duke in Trading Places, $1 is all the SEC pays in Birmingham to rent that office building. Because Birmingham knows that the trade-off, there's so much more coming out of being in Birmingham than charging them $8 or $10 million for a lease. Look, I think the Pac-12, you're right. Maybe by Sunday it's gone. And that is a shame. The Big 12's really catching on. Let's look here in the South, another conference you know about. In a lot of years, you can say they're as good as any of the, maybe the fifth best Power 5 conference. That's the Sunbelt Conference. There's a lot going on in that league, and it's kind of the footprint of the old SEC from Virginia to Texas and a lot of schools in between, Will.
So the Sun Belt's interesting because for me, I should say, I can't speak for everybody. The Sun Belt's interesting because obviously Coastal Carolina is in it, who's in here in our state, and it's neat. It's neat for me to have seen the rise of Coastal Carolina as a athletic department. This is a program that I knew as a basketball school growing up. Football was kind of irrelevant. They came in here and played South Carolina during the Steve Spurrier era. They were in the FCS, and at halftime they pulled their start. They knew they couldn't win. This was during really Steve Spurrier's height as South Carolina was running kind of wild, and South Carolina beat them 70-10. And they pulled their starters. Joe Moglia was the head coach. They pulled their starters, pulled basically their whole team, and sent the backups out there to the front line to take it. And South Carolina won 70-10. And I say that because at that point you said, man, nice little program. In this state, we have some nice little programs. We have Furman, we have Wofford, we have some really nice little FCS programs that have been competitive. And Coastal Carolina looked like they were on the rise. And Coastal Carolina said, all right, we're going to make the jump to FCS or to FBS. And I thought, man, what a stupid decision, because you're being competitive at a lower level. You're going to come to the FBS. You're going to maybe you get a chance to go to the Boca Raton Bowl. Congratulations. I guess that's a huge thing. And now then they had that big run a couple years ago with Jamie Chadwell. And I was kind of pulling for them because I love college football. I love going and being a part of college football game days. And so I was kind of pulling for Coastal Carolina when there was the realignment of the American Athletic Conference.
Yeah.
I was kind of pulling for Coastal to get into that. But to your point, you look at it, or even Conference USA. I think Conference USA was doing some realignment recently. But the Sun Belt's an interesting little conference that we kind of talked about. Appalachian State is a fun team. Georgia State is one for South Carolina fans that we kind of watch a little bit more because former offensive line coach Sean Elliott is there coaching. Sean Elliott, obviously Marshall is a big name, and I think it's cool. I kind of am going to take more of an interest in the Sun Belt a little bit this year because you have some bigger names that kind of move back into it now with Marshall, again, Appalachian State staying, all these schools. And if you can get those games down in Conway, it makes for a pretty neat, like if South Carolina and Clemson are out of town one weekend and you just want to go catch the beach and play some golf, preferably wish they would put some casinos down there and make it the Southern Atlantic Boardwalk, but that's another show and another type of show, and that's a whole other deal.
That's a good point, though. I agree with you.
Hey, as someone who grew up going to Myrtle Beach every summer for 2 weeks with an uncle that owns golf courses down there, we would drive up into Little River right on the border, and there's all this land. And even at 13 years old, I was like, there really could be a lot of casino development down. Apparently, I had a gambling mindset at a way too early age. But the point I'm making here is, for someone like me, who it's a 2.5 hour drive, and again, you can spend a weekend down there. Man, all right, South Carolina, Clemson are both away, and I don't feel like going to those games. If Appalachian State's in town, if Southern Mississippi or Marshall or Georgia State comes down, you want to go down and catch it. It's a neat little environment down there. Brooks Stadium's a really cool little environment. They've got a good fan base. It's kind of a rowdy bunch there.
Yeah.
Hey, let's go catch a game down there and catch some live college football.
Well, what I think you're right about Appalachian State. That's one of the most beautiful settings in all of college football. And you look around the country, everywhere you go, the local people, it matters a hell of a lot. They're college football, basketball, baseball, whatever. What we've got to be so careful of, and I mean, it's not that I don't want the SEC schools to be the best. I do. But we also know that's not going to be the case every single year. They're going to be – there have been cycles where if you go back and really the BCS, 92, when Steve Spurrier and a lot of people were critical of the divisional format, which led to the SEC championship game. Well, we can't do that. We're going to cannibalize ourselves. The first year, Alabama wins the national championship, and it's worked out. And you can thank Harvey Schiller when he was commissioner of the SEC before Roy Kramer. He got the NCAA rule book out, looked it through cover to cover, said it does not say anywhere we cannot have divisional format and a conference championship. Well, the NCAA tried to rebuff his efforts, but ultimately it worked out. And every conference has followed suit since then. And I think the future of college football and, all levels of college football, I want them to be good because we got to engage people in sports. It's just fun, but I also don't want to see the group of five or Division II just a farm system. I don't like that because I hate that for those coaches. But again, it's the free market. It's a diametrically opposing argument, and it's hard to say you can't do this. Just like I'm an absolute right-wing capitalist. You can't say you can get in the way of commerce, but the free market is bigger than any law.
Well, I think you're too late to the table on that. They are a farm system. They're going to be a farm system until something happens with the transfer portal or even with NIL. I mean, why not? If you go look at Juice Wells, Juice Wells is a perfect example. I know James Madison has now made the jump. They were FCS when Juice Wells was there, but Juice Wells is technically not financially, but in terms of deals, in terms of number of deals, Juice Wells here at South Carolina, the wide receiver was, I assume still is, the NIL king of the SEC. He has more deals than anybody else. Now, he doesn't have that mega deal like Nicholas Harper just got with Beats by Dre, but Juice Wells leaves the FCS, leaves James Madison to come to South Carolina. Well, there's no reason, I'll be honest, I don't know where Grayson McCall is at. I've not paid attention to Coastal Carolina this offseason to see what's going on. He at least did get an NIL deal with our NASCAR track here with Darlington, Too Tough to Tame. It was pretty cool. But if you have a big year at the FCS, number one, it's easier to take a player with proven college production. Excuse me. It's easier to take a proven player with college production at Coastal, at Appalachian State, at Georgia State. It's easier to take them than to go recruit a 3-star high school player and fill out your roster. You can take that guy. And two, that guy looks at it and says, man, I had a pretty good season. I bet I can go get some NIL dollars from South Carolina or Clemson if I want to go do that. So we're too late to the table on that unless you want to change NIL or transfer portal. Yeah. Number two on that, what I think you're fighting back on. What I think you're fighting back on if you're a coach is what Bill Hancock said when he was on with us at the SEC Media Day, because I didn't understand it properly or we didn't know, is that it's the group of 5 champion, the highest ranked champion. So if you're Coastal, if you're Appalachian State, you go, hey, we actually have a path to the playoff now. I'm not sure I understood that. I'm trying to, I think either I glossed over that fact, but any mid-level, any group of 5 team now has a path. What you have to do is win your conference, and you have to be the highest ranked group of 5 teams. So there is some caveats to that. But
what he said now.
The path is now open to get to the playoff if you're one of those teams.
It is. And what happened with that, and I did apologize for interrupting you, and I didn't mean to do it, but you during the interview when you and I had Bill Hancock on at Media Days, you said, hold on, is this news? Is this a breaking story? And he said, no, what I'm saying is it's the 6th highest ranked conference champions get the automatic bids. And then there's 6 at-large bids. So this is going to be, and I know people, we have such a sarcastic, sardonic society. There's just, people are so snarky. I mean, you'll probably have some teams get in the playoffs and get their brains beat in, but getting to the playoffs will make their program more visible. It'll bring in better recruits. The next time they go, they'll probably do better. Look, Mark Few didn't build what he's got at Gonzaga overnight. He built it by turning down offers to go to other schools. And after 20 plus years, they're a mainstay on the national landscape of college basketball. I think people, they're already getting these guys, but if there's a year when the SEC, the Big 12, and the Big 10 are really good, the ACC conference champions ranked 23rd, and the Pac-12, if they're still around, is ranked 25th or not even ranked. That's when you're going to have all these group of 5 schools coming in there, and then it's going to be crazy. And who knows what that'll mean for interest, but look what happened in college basketball this past year. Now, I don't know what the TV numbers were. I'm sure they weren't good because you didn't have the big name schools, but the days of the Blue Bloods dominating college basketball like they used to, those are gone. And I think it's more interesting.
Yeah, again, with basketball, it's now crept into using the transfer portal more so. But those younger, what happens is those smaller schools, if you can maintain a core group of 6 or 7 players, 5, 6, 7, you can maintain, and you let them kind of develop together. I was watching the other night, it's a perfect example. I was watching the Redeem Team documentary with my son on the 2008 Olympics and that group that came together. And it's interesting because they were talking about how we went in basketball from dominating the world really from the 72, I think, to 98 or 2000, something like whatever it was. And what ended up happening is it's not like America. It's not like the world caught America in talent. They didn't. What happened is you had national teams like Argentina and Greece and Spain. And what they did is they got these kids together at 17 years old, and they were the national team. Like you see in soccer. All right, that's the national team. And they play together. Whereas what we were doing and what America was doing was throwing our groups together every 4 years. All right, you 12, get together over here and go practice for 3 weeks and let's go play because we're better. Because we're cocky, we're arrogant. Hey, we got the 12 best players. We're going to send out our Jordans and Birds and Kareems and whatever, and we're going to go dominate. Well, what happened is you had great players taking on great teams. And that's, or maybe I shouldn't say great teams, but good teams who had chemistry and knew what to do. And so you had America start losing these games because these national teams have been together for 6, 7, 8 years. Well, in college basketball, what you've seen is teams that now stay, younger teams. I look around here, College of Charleston was really good under John Kress. Davidson under Bob McKillop was obviously phenomenal. We all know about Steph Curry.
Yeah.
You look at these younger teams and you keep Florida Atlantic this year. Hey, man. Keep 5, 6 guys together, get an athlete or 2 that falls through the cracks. Boom. You got a program that can compete with just about anybody.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing. Now, football, it's not that it's easy in college basketball, but the numbers. You've got 5 or 6 or 7, and you need in football, your first 44 better be really, really good. Where most teams drop off is 45 to 85. I have this discussion with a lot of our guests, and that's the problem. But the 12-team playoff, it's going to be here in 2025. I think I go back and I look at some pivotal moments, but the 1950s when they started putting college football on TV, we passed that test. Integration, bringing in black athletes, we passed that test. Brought everybody closer together. It's been great, and nothing's done what sports have done to pull people together. And great food, I might add. True South is evidence of that. I love that show. But I really, South Carolina, what would it mean for the Gamecocks, let's say in 2025, to go 10-2 and make it to the playoffs? Just to get there. Now, granted, you don't want to just get there. You want to do something when you get there. But that is a fan base that I think would just they may go insane, but in terms of donations, it'd be a catalyst.
Well, yeah, it would. But South Carolina fans, I mean, look, that they're again another another show, another story, another complete discussion on where you give your money now. Do you give it to NIL, or do you give it to, your university's club, in this situation, the Gamecock club? Where do you prioritize your money these days for giving? Unless you're a multimillionaire and you can give 500,000 here and 500,000 there, and you can make everybody happy. We all can't do that. Where do you give your money? Do you give it to your athletic department to help athletes, or do you give it directly to an NIL collective to pay for athletes? Which one is more important? But going back to what you said about, and it ties into how we opened this segment, the great thing I think about having a 12-team playoff is, if you're Mike Gundy and you're Oklahoma State, and you've been getting so close, and you've been getting so, but you can't work your way into the college football playoff. And this is maybe where Shane Beamer is coming to. If you make a college football playoff now, you look at a prospect and you go, look, we're good enough to make the playoff. You see this? We just did it. You see it? We're number 12. We're number 11. You top 50 recruit, top 40 recruit. I know you can go to Alabama and sit the bench and play in 2 years, but you can come play here immediately, and you can now push us into the top 8. Your presence, I think it opens the door in recruiting for coaches to say, hey, look, we made the playoff. You push us to the next level, as opposed to a consolidated 14 playoff where it's basically the same teams. It's usually Alabama. Well, it's usually Georgia now. It's Ohio State. Clemson has kind of fallen off a little bit. And then it's some random 5th team, Cincinnati, Michigan State, Washington. It's some random 15 that slides in there. I think that this is the great thing about the college football playoff going to 12. And I was against it. I've been against it for a while. But I think the great thing is now it opens the door for kind of recruiting to maybe be a little bit more balanced out. By the way, look at what Georgia's doing right now. I mean, Georgia's taking every top player in the country, and they're going to throw them into the mix out there on the practice field, and they're going to select who they want. And because of the transfer portal, maybe the best place to recruit prospects the next 3 years is the University of Georgia practice field, because they've taken so far, I think, don't quote me on this, because it's different sites have different rankings, but I believe Georgia's got 2 5-star backs committed with a 4-star about to commit, I believe. Again, different websites, different rankings. But basically, that's the bottom. Georgia's about to take 3 of the top 15 backs in the country. They all can't touch the ball because they're going to land more next year than they landed some last year.
Yeah, it's insane. Look, we appreciate you being on long. Got Dave Schultz coming up from the GOAT down in Lafayette, Louisiana, here in just a minute on the University of Louisiana and the Sunbelt and SEC and the big expansion stuff going on. But look, great insight as always. And I know you've been going since about 4 this morning, but let people know how they can follow you and your show that you got. And let's do this again next week. Again, I like this 12-team playoff. At first, you go from 4 to 12. I just think in 9 years, we've only had 14 teams make a 14 playoff. Okay. And most of those appearances have been by the same 5 teams. So it's going to be a fun one to watch, but let people know how to follow you.
Yeah. I don't know. What do we call it now? X or Twitter or the
X,
internet?
I guess. Yeah. X. Yeah. I call it Twitter.
41 years old and I feel so old. But if you want to go to that app, go to @Will, WIL, Gunter, GUNTER. You can always listen to us. You go to 1075thegame.com. We got you can listen there in the mornings if you ever want to just listen to what's going on with South Carolina talk. I got a former player, Preston Thorne, who works with me each and every morning. So if you ever listening, you just say, hey, I want to check in on the Gamecocks or what those clowns are talking about, go to 1075thegame.com and you can listen there. You can always follow me on Twitter @Will, WIL, Gunter, GUNTER. And I guess just for the sake, since you asked, I'll do it real quick. What have I made my threads? These stupid apps, man. I feel so old doing this, but what is my that's we got too many of them. We got too many of them, Rob. Instagram, everything. I don't even know what my threads think. Oh, it's the same. Will Gunter @WIL Gunter. So yeah, it would take a whole show to promote all of our Instagrams and Facebooks and everything we got now.
Hey, Will, before you go, Will, you really have to be impressed with Rob Browne. Despite being called out by Sam Pittman in the big room at SEC Media Days, he is shining and lighting that Ham's beer light right behind him, loud and proud. That's impressive.
Is that what it is? Okay, is that what that's? I've been trying to read
not
that.
Stuck into peer pressure from the SEC coach. Good for Rob Browne.
Ham's beer. I'll admit I had never heard of Ham's beer until what, 2 weeks ago. So that's
You're better off for it. Your insides are better off for it. All right.
It's as fine a beer as there is in the world. $15.98 for
I'll
30 rack.
Buffalo Trace and bourbon. Buffalo Trace and bourbon.
Stick with that. You'll be much
I'll
better
go
off.
I'll go from what Sam Pittman said. I'll go with a White Claw before I go down that Ham's beer avenue.
Good
that
idea.
doesn't sound good.
That's correct.
Oh my!
Well done.
Will be good.
And we're
hey,
off.
I'll follow you on X, Twitter, or whatever we call it. Okay.
Whatever it is. Y'all take care.
Right.
Good seeing you.
Thank you. Appreciate
Later,
it.
Will.
Oh man!
And we're off with a bang.
Yeah. Look, Dave. Listen, man. You had Sunbelt Media Days last week, and you're down there with John Hartwell and everybody going on. Where were the meetings this past week? Y'all are in Destin, weren't you?
No, in New Orleans.
No, I'm sorry, New Orleans. But you had some spring meetings and you cover it all. Look, here's the point I want to make with you. That in the last 10 years, there have been several years when the Sunbelt could say they were the 5th best team, supplanting perhaps the Pac-12. Let's go over that conference. You know, the teams that are the top picks to win the league this year, because I'm beginning to appreciate more and more what they do in the Sun Belt, because those fans just love the sport, and they're not, if we don't win every game, I'm going to slash my wrist type. I mean, there's an appreciation of the game, and there's some great stories to tell. And you are the Sultan of the Sun Belt.
Well, this is not your father's Sun Belt where there are like 3 good teams and everything else was a, gimme victory, right? There just isn't any. Old Dominion, how about this? Old Dominion is starting their season at Virginia Tech, hosting the Raging Cajuns in an early conference game in week 2, and then hosting Wake Forest. All right. Ricky Ronnie already has a 6-game losing streak coming in. He could be looking at a 9-game losing streak if he doesn't get things turned around and fast. And they're bringing in a new offensive coordinator and new quarterback, so they could put some points up on the board. But you have in the Eastern Division, JMU, which took everybody by surprise. Maybe they shouldn't. They won the East, but can't go to the Sunbelt Championship game or a bowl game because of a stupid FCS to FBS rule. Whatever. Yeah, you got App State, who's always good. Although, how about this one, Rob? App State is only going to have their 4th quarterback in the last 10 years. They had 3 quarterbacks in the last 9 years. That's it. Cajuns played 3 quarterbacks last year. App State's going to play their 4th quarterback in 10 years. And then you got Marshall, along with Coastal Carolina, who's bringing only back the 3-time SEC Player of the Year. I'm sorry, Sunbelt Player of the Year, Grayson McCall. But he's got a new coach in Tim Beck. They're coming up on the Lockdown Sunbelt podcast here shortly. So you got 4 teams over in the East, and you got 4 good teams in the West. I think South Alabama is going to have the best year. We'll see if it is special. I'm still trying to figure out the 7.5 over/under. They got a shot at certainly beating Tulane. Can they go in and beat Oklahoma State? I don't know. They almost took down UCLA last year, and UCLA should be on major upset watch against Coastal Carolina. You want an early season pick, maybe Coastal against UCLA. That's like a 16-point spread. And then you have Troy, the defending champion. They have some major pieces to replace along that offensive line and defensively. And what I like to call the Fighting Will Halls from Southern Miss. They seem to be better off at quarterback. So you got 4 teams in the East, 4 teams in the West. And then you have the up-and-comers, the Georgia's team, Georgia Southern, Georgia State, along with ODU, and then Texas State with G.J. Kinney. And eventually the recruiting has to pay off for Arkansas State, right? Butch Jones has done a good job recruiting, but he hasn't translated that into wins. And then you have ULM with Terry Bowden, which may be the toughest job in D1 football.
Yeah. Right. Look, hold that thought. We're going to take a quick commercial break. Here it is from a listener, Frank Sutton in Birmingham. Kudos to Schultz for the bookcases background. He's a well-read Renaissance man. I agree. We're going to be right back. The Sultan of the Sun Belt, Dave Schultz at the GOAT down in Lafayette, Louisiana. Q's Nation forever is with us right after this quick commercial break.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, Call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right. Perry Mason on Me TV in the background, Dave. I just asked Audrey, and Mallory's up here with Chandler, the baby, on the way to go see the mother-in-law. And I just said, is Perry Mason going to win that case? I think so. He will. Hey,
no spoiler
Schultz,
alert. No spoiler alert.
Yeah. Schultz, what I love about you, and I get, you wouldn't believe the number of people that go, you know what? I love Schultz because not only does he know the Sunbelt, he knows all over the country. You are so versatile. You are one of these Swiss Army knife type guys, I call you, but you do read a lot, and you get it. We're going to learn a lot about not just the SEC, but about the Sunbelt. You talked about the Fighting Will Halls, and
right.
I talked earlier this week with one of our guests about with Jake Wimberly down at the Afternoon Drive in Jackson, Mississippi. I said, what happened with Southern Miss? He said, well, what happened to them was what happened at South Alabama, at Troy, at all these other schools, at University of Louisiana. And I said, you know what? You're right. But now you're right. Let's zero in and focus and blow up on the big screen Southern Miss, Roberts Stadium in Hattiesburg, because that's a program I have followed for a long, long time. And it was when Reggie Collier was there and Sammy Winder, and they've always been really good. Jeff Bauer had them going for 14 years. And then again, those other schools happened. What was it that turned the corner for them to be heading back in an upward trajectory?
Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure what happened because they beat Louisiana in the New Orleans Bowl, like in 16, I think. The last good year under Mark Hudspeth, and we could go back and look. The quarterback,
7. Yeah.
I think the quarterback is like a third stringer for the 49ers, or was the third stringer. He's in the pros, but I don't know what happened after that. It fell apart because the next time we're seeing Southern Miss, right? The South Alabama is going into Hattiesburg, and it may have been like a special Thursday night game. It kind of felt like some people, like Ross Dellinger, I think, was there. It was an odd deal, an odd Thursday night ball game. But that opened up the season. I think you're right.
It was a Thursday.
Something like that. South Alabama went into Hattiesburg, beat Southern Miss, and the head coach quit. Like one game. He quit.
Yeah.
I have no idea what had happened in terms of the support or finance or anything like that, but it had fallen off a cliff fast, right? From winning a bowl game in New Orleans to like 3 years later, the head coach just quitting. I'm not sure what happened. Will Hall is Mississippi through and through. He's from there, although he played somewhere else and has coached other places. He comes in as the offensive coordinator from Tulane, and I joke about he was a little bit high-strung, all right? He, too, lost the first game of his career to South Alabama and kind of got blown up a bit. Jake Trotter and company and Jalen Tolbert kind of, a couple of possessions in, started getting that offense rocking and rolling. And he thought it was like the worst thing ever. He really went overboard, right? Like he was embarrassed and it's the worst loss ever and we'll get it going. And, you got to, coach, you got to switch to decaf, take it easy. It's game one into a major rebuild, right? You're short of scholarship players, right? Your team is inexperienced. You're a head coach for the first time. A loss is disappointing. I get it, but it's the first game of the season. Slow your roll. Well, 2 years later, he's in a bowl game winning the Lending Tree Bowl. It's something new now, but the Lending Tree Bowl last year in Mobile, and he's got Frank Gore Jr. back, and they got a transfer quarterback from Clemson and a transfer quarterback from, at one point, Houston, but East Mississippi Community College, right? Is that last chance?
Yeah.
You? So
Scuba. Yeah.
they're going to be okay. I think they're going to be okay at quarterback. But Will Hall also, he has taken it down a notch, right? You can't be throwing a conniption in the first quarter when you still have 3 quarters to play. Like, I think the first play of the game from Southern Miss to the Cajuns last year was either an interception or pick 6. Like, immediately, the first play of the game, interception, and the Cajuns probably, scored a touchdown on it, and yet Southern Miss was able to come back and win that game, because if the coach is panicking, that's not going to work for the players, right? The coach can't panic.
That's right.
And so Will Hall, Will Hall is one of those guys that you have seen grown into the game, into his role. He's very confident. They're doing it the right way. Southern Miss has they're not like the fans in Alabama and in Louisiana, where they have their own fans. They don't worry about Ole Miss and Mississippi State. I mean, obviously they don't have 100,000 fans or anything like that, but they can fill the Rock. The Rock, I was there last year for the Jaguars game, and they got some nice seating on one side of the end zone that looks new, right? And the offices on the other side of the end zone. It's the middle part that's probably been there for, 50 to 100 years. But, it looks, they're trying to do their best. It was a rainy day, and, they had a good crowd. It was a good ball game. Jaguars won it at the end. But that's a good program. We'll see if they can get, them and the Cajuns are a little bit behind, at least this year, South Alabama and Troy. We'll see if the quarterback can do a good job. They play good defense. They'll be able to run the ball with Frank Gore Jr. They have to cut down on the turnovers. That's the big thing that they just got to cut down on the turnovers. That killed them last year.
Well, and you look at Kay Womack at South Alabama.
Yes.
And then you look at Will Hall at Southern Miss. Obviously, these guys, if they keep winning like they're winning, a lot of people are going to come after them. But Will Hall is a Mississippi native. His dad's a high school coach, legend. There are going to be guys like Mark Few, I mentioned a minute ago, out at Gonzaga. I want to be my own thing. I want to create something my own. I don't want to just keep taking the next hot job that comes along. And you look at what's going on in Texas. I mean, with the number of recruits out there, there's a lot of money and all these programs, they all need money. But I think that when you watch these games, a purist in sports watches a lot of basketball, late at night, and you watch these games like Santa Clara or just these odd schools. But when the NCAA tournament comes around and you talk to the people who've been watching those teams, they're going, you better watch that team. They're really good. I've watched them late at night. They play out on the West Coast, whatever. That's what you see in the Sunbelt. A few years, go back 4 years ago, 2019, Mike Orasco, the commissioner of the American Athletic Conference. You could make an argument in 2019, hell, Memphis won 12 games, went to the Cotton Bowl. Tulane. Hey, can Tulane keep up what they're doing? Hell, their quarterback, Pratt, is back.
Right. I mean, that's a huge ball game week 1, Rob. South Alabama, had a great year last year, 10 wins, but they laid a big-time egg against Western Kentucky in the New Orleans Bowl. They're heading back to New Orleans to take on Tulane. I'm not sure I'm convinced that you can have a trap game to open up the season, right? We have trap games and we have letdown games, right? The trap game is, a lesser opponent in between two opponents, right?
Yeah.
A letdown game is a lesser opponent after a big opponent. But Tulane, again, you can't really have a trap game to begin the season, but Tulane is not only playing South Alabama week 1, but they're playing Ole Miss week 2. And not only are they playing Ole Miss is coming to them.
Yeah.
Ole Miss is going to play in Holman Stadium. So it is going to be rocking and rolling. Now, the reason I'm told there won't be a trap game is because, wouldn't you know it, Will Hall, the former offensive coordinator for Tulane, went down there and beat them last year. So they're going to Willie Fritz will have them prepared because, again, I think that South Alabama, is one of those teams. Now, they could start the season easily 1-2, right? They could lose to Tulane, beat Southeastern, and lose to Oklahoma State, all right? And then my theory is blown out of the water. But if somehow they beat Tulane, they'll be a top 25-ish team. coming off a 10-win season, and they'll certainly be a top 25 team if they beat Oklahoma State and start out 3-0. And then it's just being the Sunbelt. So, they have some tough games. They got to go to Troy. They got to go to JMU. So it's not going to be easy. Yeah. But South Alabama could be one of those teams that, people are talking about. UCF, Cincinnati. I don't think they'll be quite high enough to be in the playoff, but certainly you start out 3-0, they're looking at a New Year's Six-Day Bowl, barring injury.
Well, what you've got in Alabama, you got about 140, maybe 150.
By the way,
yeah,
it's a good hair day. Just saying.
Yeah, that's right. Hey, look at the numbers of players in Alabama. Jason Caldwell, my good friend inside the Auburn Tigers, talks about the state of Alabama in terms of high school prospects for D1 is where the state of Georgia was 10 years ago. Well, now Alabama is about 150 a year. Georgia is around 250. Georgia's number 4 in the country, and the state of Alabama is number 6. What's going on? And I look at what's going on at all these different schools. There's more players for them. I mean, at Mobile,
well,
you just were in Mobile there. It's a cool story.
Yeah, I think, some of these places have great facilities, right? We're teaching kids how to eat better, right?
That's number one. That's big.
They're working out, right? I mean, they're working out all year long, right? Even training camp for the pros, 20, 30 years ago used to be training camp. Like, we're going to get in shape in August. Now, the professionals, they, back in the Colts and the Packers, they had to work, but now they work all year round to be in shape. And that's what, unless the players a lot of them still play basketball. Some of them will play baseball. Some of them will run track, but they're in shape when they come into camp. And that's why I think, over the last 20, 25 years, we're seeing a lot more players because, people have learned, sugar is not that great for you. All right. It has its place, right? Try to cut back on the carbs. All right. When right. And stay hydrated. So I think the nutritional aspect of the game has trickled down, if you will, to the high school level where, I saw who's the line, Omar Spites. Is that Omar Spates is that his name from LSU? Dude, this guy looks like Demario Davis. He is enormous. Wow. He does not look like a college kid. He looks like a full-grown man. He is.
Well, Dave, we were talking with Rodney Orr and Gary Harris over in Tuscaloosa, Tyler Insider TV this week. And they had, David Ballou, the strength and conditioning. Alabama's the tip of the spear when it comes to that. And I'm telling you, you can work out all you want. And I've seen it firsthand with me, swimming, biking, running, lifting. You cannot out-exercise a sloppy, poor diet. And you're right. I've talked to coaches.
Well, I think Nick Saban has done a little bit of TB12. They're really concerned with the elasticity, not necessarily how big your muscles are, but they've cut down. I think he came back a couple of years ago and said they cut down in a big way in soft tissue injuries, less hamstring pulls.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Strain, so they were really big on. Obviously, if you tear an ACL, you really can't do anything about that, right? But they're having less soft tissue issues, and more guys are healthy because I think they've adopted the TB12 method to be more flexible.
Yeah, I'm going to be. We're going to have Dr. Tyler Ellis. I've known him since he was in 9th grade. He's finishing up his. He'll be joining the staff on Ole Miss as one of their orthopedic surgeons, and he will be on the show with us. Try to have him on every week talking about, like what you say, injuries, prevention of injuries, and conditioning. And it is absolutely amazing. Rodney Orr and Gary Harris talked about Alabama has one player who came in a year ago. He's dropped 98 pounds. Okay. Another one, 51 pounds. And they're dropping that weight and replacing it, just getting – if you bring a 400-pound kid out of high school, he's going to look like Fat
That's
Albert.
What I mean. 98 pounds. The kid was 350,
he was
400.
obese. Yeah, close to 4 bills. Yeah. That's
almost dangerous, right?
Yeah, that is dangerous. But I'll tell you, I was talking to one of the coaches with my son at Auburn about 5 years ago. We were up in his office right before the season after practice one day. And we were talking about the diet, and he goes, man, these kids, you're right. They come in and it's sugar, sugar, sugar drinks, sugar, sugar, sugar. They're eating crap, and they're putting it in their bodies.
Even the sports drinks, right? Even
it's adults
stuff,
too. Don't think
right?
it's just the kids. Yes.
Honestly, coming back from SEC media days, I could not find Gatorade Zero. I was stuck to. I mean, the good stuff, right? The regular stuff is a lot of sugar, which we were trying to avoid. But
the Gatorade Zero is the only one you want to put in. I'm with you, but I'm telling you, like, look at your alert level that you have. Only thing, I have maybe some coffee during the show, but you're right. It's the nutrition, and you get your athletes in better shape. Again, neither of us are doctors, but the hamstring injuries, you don't see it. Alabama's starting 22 is pretty much the same from beginning to end. Last year, look, the 2 losses they had were epic. The knuckleball by Necro at the end in Knoxville, I was there, and then the LSU game. Dave, when you come to Auburn this year, Waller and I, Dr. Waller May Veterinary Clinic, and I, we want to take you out and show you a good time. And you probably got a ton of connections at Auburn everywhere. You've been doing this a while, but that wellness center they have at Auburn, you walk in and you got red card, green card, blue card, yellow card, and you match up your diet. Like they'd say, Schultz, okay, this is what he's supposed to eat. And if you can't handle that, you're not trying. They've got Auburn's dietitian. She's an LSU grad with a master's from Alabama in sports nutrition, and she's Auburn's nutritional director. She's about 28 years old, but that's what you got to have. And you think about a guy like Cade Womack, that Jaguar program at South Alabama. I mean, what goes. I'm telling you, David, I mean this sincerely. You're out there. You are like a real-time newspaper because you work your ass off putting out content. And I get comments from friends that are fans.
One thing I would tell you, that's the one thing that South Alabama needs. They need one more addition to their facilities because they have, as far as group of 5 facilities go, they're in good shape. Baseball stadium, softball stadium, the arena for basketball, the football stadium. They have what I call the indoorish facility, right? It's not totally enclosed, but it's covered. And K. Womack said it's the largest in the state. They don't have they need a better workout and training facility. That would be the next thing that they need to take South Alabama to potentially the next level. Like the Cajuns have one. I'm guessing Troy has one. That's what they need next. That would be, I don't know how much one of those things costs compared to a stadium or offices. Yeah. But that's the next thing that they need. I mean, they are literally outside in kiddie pools cooling off after their ice pools are kiddie pools after practice. So they need to step that up. But otherwise, they have outstanding facilities at South Alabama. In terms of K. Womack, it'll be interesting. I think he's going to be a little bit like Billy Napier. I don't think he's taken another job just to take it and go get more money. All right. So he's Mississippi through and through. So if one of those 2 jobs opens up and now Mississippi State is closed for a bit, one would think, the unfortunate passing of Mike Leach, Zach Arnett has it, but we'll see how long Lane Kiffin sticks around Ole Miss. Because I don't think Napier, and with all due respect, is going to go to another group of 5 for just a few more bucks. I don't think he's heading to Memphis or a Tulane or something along those lines. He's in good shape there. He specifically said on Locked On Sunbelt, he was the defensive coordinator in Mobile, so he wanted the job. He got, not only did he get another raise, but he's got his assistants more raises. So, he could have that special year. He's certainly going to tip his, foot in the pool if he comes away with another 10 or an 11 win year for sure. And if he has a ridiculous season, he may get, picked up by somebody. But I think he's going to dangle like Napier did with South Carolina and Auburn, Mississippi State, and wait for the job, whatever that job is for him. And who knows where, it's Friday morning, right? We were talking, the Pac-12 was basically still intact on Tuesday. It's no longer intact. We'll find out where all these conferences, teams are going to be by the weekend. Pac-12 may not make it to Monday, may not make it to my show this afternoon. So we'll see where all of this realignment lines up, and what's in store for Coach Womack. But I'm not sure he's in a big hurry to take off again. Now his big year is happening 1 year earlier than Napier's did. Napier's happened in his fourth year. This is Womack's third season. So that's the only real difference. And Billy knew what he had in terms of Levi Lewis. He knew what he had coming back. Carter Bradley's going to take off. We'll see. They have a couple of quarterbacks that are behind him. I don't think quite as good. Carter Bradley's an NFL prospect, certainly has an NFL arm. So we'll see what about that. But it certainly could be a special year for South Alabama. But I don't think Kane Womack is in a big hurry to take off anytime soon.
Yeah, and look, this is Bo Carter. Bo's been around. He was at the South after he left Mississippi State, the Southwest Conference. He put them to sleep. And then the Big 12 office, National Football Foundation, Baseball Writers Association of America. He didn't do it, but he was just there. He saw the end of a conference. Bo, I don't know if you know Dave Schultz, but
yes,
it's one of my favorite guests. I'm going to tell you why I love him on here, because every time he's on here, people go, gosh, damn, I love that guy, because he just tells it like it is. And damn, Dave,
well, I mean,
we're telling what you're talking about.
I don't know if you know this, but again, I said it at the beginning when I came out, Bo, Rob was called out at SEC Media Days by the Arkansas head coach, Sam Pittman, about liking ham beer. And Rob's got such a, he doesn't drop it enough during these things. He's a financial investor, so he doesn't drop it enough in there. He can do better than Ham's beer, with all due respect to Ham's beer. He can do better. He was called out by Sam Pittman, and yet that light is showing up loud and proud. I give it to Rob Browne for not sucking into peer pressure from a SEC head coach. Good for you, Rob.
Sam Pittman.
Bad for your stomach, bad for your liver. Good for you.
It's actually fine Pilsner. And I think that the biggest thing is that what I tell people, $15.98 for a 30 rack of that stuff. But Bo, along the lines of what
there's a reason
and
for
Ben Troupe came on for a second, then we lost him, but he'll be back in a second. When he gets back, he'll be back. But Bo, you heard what Dave is saying. The Pac-12 may not be there this afternoon when he does his show on the GOAT down in Lafayette, Louisiana. You know about conference expansion. You're very much is it a harbinger of things to come in other leagues, or is it just that league, it's finally time to pay up and they're paying for their past, mistakes?
You guys have hit it on the head. Feinbaum even says now that there are going to be 2 32-team super conferences, which heck might happen. You've got north, south, east, west divisions or whatever with 8 teams or 16 teams each, and that's what when they started talking about the college football playoff system in the 90s, they wanted a 16-team super conference. So it's as Dave said, it's headed that way probably, and looks like the Big 12 is going to go in and take in Arizona State, and Utah, and that gives Brigham Young a natural rival out there. So it's really going to be the sparks are flying as we speak.
Dave, you heard, and Ben had kind of an emergency come up, something he didn't realize. Dave, stay on as long as you can. I'm going to tell you something about you, Dave. Bo, this is what I told him. And someone pointed this out about Schultz. It's like a real-time newspaper, because you're putting so much stuff out with graphics and everything on X or Twitter, whatever the hell we call it now. What do we call it now? X or Twitter?
Yeah.
It's still Twitter.
I don't know what it is. But what I love is, and this is the thing, is, he covers Sunbelt, covers everything, but you both have a grasp. The best people on this show are the ones that cover everything. Just like these coaches. Every coach, we get, oh my God, we get different coaches on here, and you ask them, say, what did you, John Brady, coach, what did you start out at making when you first started coaching? He goes, let me stop you. He goes, my first 3 years as a high school basketball coach, I made $15,000 a year.
That's right.
And I'm going, oh yeah, okay. My first job in TV was 10-4. And I'm not saying, 10,000 for, you'll take the job. I go, yeah. He goes, you'll really take it. I go, yes. Because I turned down an opportunity to work with NBC Sports in New York and CBS. I got 2 in, I did not want to live in New York. I love it, but I wanted to be back down here. But I had 1 Spanish class left, and I knew if I went up there, I'd be 75, 90, 100 years old going, I got to get this Spanish class. So I took a year and 11 weeks, and I was begging for a good grade at the end. And my professor said, come on, man. He goes, 20 years ago, I had guys begging me to keep them out of the Vietnam War. You're just wanting to see. And I made it. But let's get back, Dave. When you talk about conference expansion, you talk about the Big 12 when Bob Bowlesby was, you could say, blindsided. But, man, that conference recovered so well. But look at the Sunbelt, Dave. Tell us a little about that, Commissioner, because he is a guy that's put together a pretty damn good lineup himself. Because you and John Hartwell, what y'all need to do, I'd like to see him commissioner and you director of communications.
That would be great.
Why not?
Well,
I'll pay you
I'll
$1
be
million
honest
each.
with you, I was not impressed with Keith Gill when he got the gig, but boy, he came out with flying colors. The Sun Belt is in a position almost like the ACC right now. You can't really be proactive. You have to react, and the Sun Belt did, right? We were sitting at SEC Media Days in 21, right? And all of a sudden, I guess it was Ryan Fowler from the Tide says, Schultz, Texas and Oklahoma are going to the Big Ten. I'm like, yeah, right. That's not happening. And it was. And then I'm coming out of Cooperstown in the Hall of Fame last summer. And my cousin goes, UCLA and USC are going to the Big Ten. I mean, come on. I mean, that's not happening. And it was.
Yeah,
and
right.
So they did a really good job with some of these, old rivalries to bring them in, right? Everyone's complaining about the rivalries breaking up. But, Marshall, Old Dominion, App State, Georgia Southern, these teams are all familiar with each other for a long time. JMU, they are all drivable in a day, some further than others, but, you can drive it, if you leave work at noon and, you're ready to go. You spend the night and you go back after the game or you go back on a Sunday morning. But, the Marshalls, the Old Dominion's got some work to do. Old Dominion, is that like the biggest? That's one of the biggest college markets that does not have a major league team. Maybe Austin is bigger than that right now. But remember, guys, back in the day, Norfolk and Virginia Beach is like the largest metropolitan area without a major league team. It was. I'm not sure if it's still the case anymore, but it certainly was. And so they have that almost all to themselves. They got a couple of, AAA teams there in terms of baseball and hockey, and Norfolk State is right there as well. And then you got Southern Miss. And, right now, Southern Miss may end up being the Raging Cajuns' rival. Raging Cajuns do not have a rival in the state where, or in the league where people are going to come to the game. People come to the games is when Grambling comes, Southern Miss comes, or not, Southern comes, and McNeese comes. And ULM doesn't travel. Arkansas State's too far to travel. And so Southern Miss will be a good measuring stick to see how many come. And it's a Thursday night game, so hopefully it's good weather. And so hopefully we'll see how that goes, because the Cajuns are desperate for a rival, and they don't have one. They need a couple of teams, like if La Tech came into the Sun Belt or Tulane came into the Sun Belt. They need some teams that are going to drive attendance. And sorry for it's not the best of all words, but a little hatred towards the teams. There's really none of that. It's kind of with Coastal, but you're not going to play them every year. And that has to do with not playing in the championship a few years ago due to COVID. But Southern Miss is going to be the closest thing to a rival. And, Keith Gill just did a fantastic job. I don't know if they can go get, whatever the repercussions are, in East Carolina, a Memphis, a UTSA, some of these teams. Memphis would be close to Arkansas State. UTSA would be close to Texas State. There are some options for them if things start falling apart. But I can tell both of you guys last Tuesday, right? We're talking 10 days ago. We're not interested in expansion. And then by 4:00 Wednesday, when Colorado was leaving the Big 12. So I just had, and we'll put it out next week, just had Keith Gill on Lockdown Sunbelt, your team every day. Get it wherever you find your podcasts and YouTube.
Give us the address real quick.
Right. It's just Lockdown. It's a Schultz cast. You can find me here, but it's Lockdown Sunbelt. You can find it. Just do a search. And so I don't know if they're still not really interested in expansion, but again, things are changing by the hour. And so we'll see what happens, right? I mean, I don't know what the ACC is going to do. The ACC needs to get Notre Dame in that conference and needs to get them in fast, but I guess that's not going to happen. No.
Yeah. Let me say something real quick. The track and field community around the world is focused on what's going on in Memphis today, starting at 1:00 at Rhodes College and tomorrow, and on Beale Street tomorrow. There are teams like Elite Track and Field Event, edmurphyclassic.com, It is $15 at the door, $65, all you can drink. You know, it's an incredible venue, Rhodes College. I'll be over there this afternoon starting at 1 o'clock, edmurphyclassic.com. And also, just
what
remember,
are you running in?
I'm going shorts, shoes. But, let me say, I'll be watching. I'm going to say, yeah. But the St. Paul Open, first ever St. Paul Open, Saturday, or it's actually October 2nd, first annual St. Paul Open to benefit the Peter J. Sarton Scholarship Fund, Bishop Sarton. Call Michael Jordan. That's right. Michael Jordan, my friend, 901-647-3014. They still have opportunities. If you want to get a team together for flag and hole sponsors, they need obviously money, participants, items donated in lieu of cash. If you're Catholic, if you're not, you just want to support a great cause. Peter J. Sarton, Bishop Sarton, one of the absolute best people out there. The St. Paul Open, October 2nd. Find out more about it. Guys, both of y'all, I love this discussion back and forth. You think about Colorado, and I'm telling you, if you've been to Boulder, you know, they smoke a lot of weed out there, okay? Well, I don't know if it's apathy or whatever, but what college campus do they not smoke a lot of weed on? yeah, it's legal. So I don't know if it was that they did it first, you know, and Red Rocks is out there, Colorado, and a lot of deadheads and now spread heads, you know, the widespread panic go out there.
John Dever sang a long time ago about Rocky Mountain High.
He did. But I'm just wondering, what is it we've got to do to get these people excited, man? Bo, you know the Big 12. You wrote a book with Dennis Dodd about the greatest places to eat in Big 12 country. And I saw Dennis Dodd up there at Media Days. Guy works out every morning. He is a hardcore guy. But I'm going to start with you. Is Colorado with Deion Sanders there? They've got money. How serious are they? And you know about all the money in Texas as you live in just north of the Metroplex.
That's right. Another 40 miles would be in Colorado. But Rob, you're right. It never was really. Dave could probably agree with this too. It never was really a good fit in the Big Ten. They competed well in
the Pac-12. You mean?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Pac-12. Yeah. Men and women's basketball did well. Colorado doesn't have baseball, unfortunately. They dropped it in 1980, but they just, they couldn't. I don't know the culture or whatever. Maybe the marijuana. I don't know what was going on, but but they they had the natural rivalries with the old Big 8 and the Big 12 teams. So again, their attendance really dropped off the last 2 or 3 years. But now they're with Coach Prime there. I think they've got 3 or 4 home sellouts already. So he's generated millions of dollars plus donations are up like 100% or whatever. So. Win, lose, or draw, they're having a good year financially this year.
Yeah.
Also, Rob,
no baseball.
Should be noted, and Bo knows this. Was it Folsom Field? Is that right? Yeah. It's not 100,000 seat stadium. It's like 60.
Exactly.
It might be 60. It's very picturesque. You're right there. Yeah. Looking over out one of the end zones. It's the mountains. So it's a gorgeous stadium. Kind of an old school feel. It is not an 80 to 100,000 monstrosity. So you got to get, it turns out, you got to get a bunch of people from Denver, and it's not close to anything, right? There, you're close to Colorado State. That's it. So, you got to get people to either come in from Denver or fly into Denver, which is only 40 minutes away. It's not that far, but it is not. We can go to the Pacific Coast Highway from LA to to Northern California and watch a football game. You got to make an effort to get there. Is the thing. Good point.
I mean, that you just nailed it. You got to make an effort. You got to want to go there. I know Colorado State has a vet school, but they got one at Mississippi State and they got one at Auburn. I just found out they got one there. They got one at Georgia. But look, for both of y'all now, let's get back down here and looking in the SEC from media days. It was, as everybody has said, it was pretty mundane, pretty boring, but maybe that's a good thing. But Greg Sankey,
I disagree.
Yeah,
I completely disagree, Rob.
I didn't think it was boring, but that was the narrative.
Nick Saban went off of the reservation. I don't want to hear anybody tell me carrot cake is good. I don't want to hear it. I don't want vegetables in my dessert. That was an outrageous, outlandish statement. I don't care how many national championships the man wins. He is wrong when he's telling me carrot cake is good. If I wanted salad for dessert, I'd have salad for dessert. I don't want salad for dessert. I want dessert in my dessert. Stick with the basics, Nick.
Jeez. Someone asked him that question. You know, it would have been more fun if they would have brought Brother Theodore, that old guy that used to be on the Letterman show. Brother Theodore, and Letterman would get him on. I don't know where they got Brother Theodore, but some of the questions, you know, Ham's beer, carrot cake. But I asked him that because he does celebrate, and Sam Pittman goes, "Well, I'm not promoting it, but I think I'm gonna have me an old cold beer," and that's the way he is. And he is, you know what he is? He's Joe Sixpack. And everybody loves that, and they love to do it. Dave, I got to ask you. I'm going to start. I want to ask Bo this. I want to ask Dave this. Who's the best interview you've had with a coach that you can remember? Like, this guy is so real that he connects with people like nobody before. So Bo first, then you, Dave. And it doesn't have to be all time, but maybe recent.
No, I hate to say it's going all time. The late great Emory Ballard, when we were working at Mississippi State, was doing a magazine story with him, and he's always, God darn it, I've told this story 500 times, about how he invented the wishbone offense or whatever. And it was, I mean, he sat there and talked for 30 minutes. Great. I mean, it's tremendous stuff. Line up the kids in the backyard playground and like seeing if they, had to split the backs back, and it pretty. The thing that the 10-year-olds could figure out, they figured college kids could do too, and run the triple option. But no, there in any recent interview with Leach, Dave would probably agree. He's wedding advice, whatever, caramel corn, anything else. He would always go the famous 7 words. I guess he would always go off topic and make it. You never know. Hopefully, I mean, the one thing he didn't curse, so that was good, except on the football field. But you never knew what you had.
That doesn't count.
On a microphone. So,
Dave, I mean, I like that. Emory Ballard. I mean, talking about the wishbone. God, I mean, because he's the one.
I've had, a diverse career where I did some minor league ball. I got a chance to talk with Jeffrey Hack Leonard. And because, I mean, big guy, intimidating man, right? But if you stood there and took it, he sort of respected you. So I talked back to him, which may not have been the brightest all moves, but I got a chance to get a good sit down. He's like, all right, this guy's not a pushover. I walked in to get Eric Chavez for a pregame show interview about 20 minutes before the game, and I got yelled at for it. So, Ken Oberkfell was David Wright's manager in AA, and he kind of looked like the manager from Major League. Forget about the curveball Ricky throwing the heater. So that was good. I just had a really good sit down, and again, he's coming up on. Well, it actually was released today. Locked on Sunbelt, your team every day. Mike Desimo, one of the reporters from Media Day was like, he's still very green when it comes to this. He doesn't realize yet that he doesn't have to say anything, and so he was very open with me, saying, look, my head was spinning. I got the job basically the day before the Sunbelt Championship game. It was announced the day after the Sunbelt Championship game. We're going out recruiting. Then I got a bowl game. Then I got to replace the players that we lost. We lost more coaches than we were supposed to lose. And by the time he realized what he had as a team, he was going to just do the same thing they had already done, but you got to bring in a new quarterback. You got a really young offensive line. And he's like, the plan that we had for last year was not going to work for last year, but it was too late to change it. You don't get that from coaches. You just don't. And so hopefully he stays as open as that he is, right? It was not really a gotcha question. It was just like, all right, what happened last year? What can you do better this year? And it was a 5-minute answer. And that's when you get, and that's the thing about, the SEC Media Days versus the Sunbelt Media Days, Rob. I got every single coach at Sunbelt Media Days in 2 days.
Yeah.
Every single coach came by. And we were on the radio. Now I'm trying to get every single coach for, SEC for Locked On Sunbelt, and I got about half of them so far. And it's only been, it's been a week, right? A little bit more than a week since Sunbelt Media Days, and camp is opening up. So when you get access to these guys, right? And I'm not a gotcha guy. I'm the last one who's going to report news. I'm also going to be the last one to find out about it. So I don't really care. I want to pump these guys up. I'm much better at constructive criticism. I may have learned that the hard way. You use the group instead of the individual. So I also had the chance to have like 4 seasons with Sparky Lyle. I wish I was as good back then as I am now, because that would have been, I'm not even sure we would have talked about the current team. I just would have talked about the 77, 78 Yankees for 4 years. So I had a good relationship there, but these guys realize that I'm here to pump them up. If there is news to report, you do that and you kind of move on. I am not the investigative reporter. And again, by the time I find out about it, everyone else is going to know. So no one reaches out to me like the kid out in Minnesota who reported that USC was going to the Big Ten. I just found that out.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Well, you're making a great point about going to the Sunbelt. You got all 14 coaches. And you got 7 of them. 7 of them have already been on Schultz. Yeah.
They may not know my name, but they know they know who I am, right? It's one of those deals, right? And so, Charles Huff, knows who I am. John Summerall from Troy knows who I am. I think Sean Clark from App State knows who I am. I'm going to record Tim Beck from Coastal Carolina. He just got the gig. He's coming on Locked On Sunbelt for the second time. Good luck to Chris Gordy getting any SEC coach on Locked On SEC outside of being SEC Media Days. He's better hooked up than I am in terms of technology, so we got him at Media Days, whatever one he could get. But, that's my benefit, that these guys, here's the difference, right? Sunbelt needs the exposure. The SEC really doesn't. So they don't have to do that. So I'm really appreciative of that. And it turns, instead of an interview, when you get them for 20 minutes, it turns into a conversation. And the better interviews, you guys know this, the better interviews are not with the better questions, they're with the better answers. So when you get a good interview, it's not because of me, it's because of them, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, it's like when we have the great guests on like y'all and the print journalist, Ken Capps will be on here with us a lot with Bo Carter on Fridays. We said, look, to our intern, William Halliday, a freshman to be a sophomore, writes for the Auburn student newspaper, the Auburn Plainsman. He said, look, your question, your story to the gymnastics coach at Auburn isn't, golly, Suni Lee is leaving, the gold medalist gymnast. He goes, your question and your story is to Coach Graba, the gymnastics coach at Auburn. Who are the 2 or 3 gymnasts you think, the 2 or 3 girls that are going to replace Suni Lee that we don't know about yet? And I like what Dave just said. There's a lot of this gotcha journalism and just everybody's just waiting for the other shoe to fall, the other shoe to drop. And there are a lot of great stories out there. But if I'm a young guy in this business, gentlemen, I'm going to the Sunbelt and I'm going to get to know those coaches because I'm going to learn how to interact with coaches. I'm going to also develop relationships, which Schultz does. And you know this, Bo. Bo, I saw Claude Felton. I got to meet him. A legend, Georgia SID. And he's a bigger than life legend. But you know what? He has relationships. He probably still has a Rolodex. Schultz from Syracuse. I don't know how long you've been down in the South, but you've got us figured out. You know what? We like people that Dave, you're going to go find the stories. Like you say, I'm not looking for some guy to stub his toe to just destroy him. Bo, being an SID in the days, we were talking about what media days used to be like. They said, hell, they set everybody around a round table, literally, and people just took notes. Guys were smoking and drinking a scotch and diesel. And, that's in reference to the diesel getting in the water system up here in Germantown. How about a scotch and diesel? But anyway, that's what they did. Schultz just nailed it. You can't put a high enough premium on sitting down, having a ice cold Ham's beer or something like that, or a scotch and diesel with a coach. Like you say, ask the question, just let him go. And if he pauses, you don't have to panic because he may be about to tell you the real story.
That's right. That's exactly right. Hey, I was going to tell Dave, we got a good connection with Sunbelt basketball. Bob Marlin was a basketball manager at Mississippi State when I worked down there, and he would we roomed together on the road. He would he's a six-pack guy, Rob. He would warm up for the next day's game by drinking a six-pack the night before it. So he was like Babe Ruth. He was like the Babe Ruth story. I roomed with this suitcase,
I love it.
Please tell Marlon hello for us, one of the all-time greats.
Well, I certainly have a good story now with Bob Marlin, and he's another one of those guys. So football and basketball coaches are different. Football coaches don't have a lot of time to do anything but their own team, right? Basketball coaches, once they're done with their game, right? They go home and watch whatever. They can't go to sleep right away. So they're going home and watching the next game, whatever is on, to calm down and, maybe enjoy an adult beverage before they go to bed. And so Bob is one of those guys. I know, Jim Boeheim was one of those guys. They just consume a lot of college basketball. So it's nice to sit down, and Bob's a big baseball fan. So even before we get to the basketball portion of the show, we talk Cardinals baseball, which may not be a great topic for him when I see him next.
Well, I'm with you. We had Bob Marlin on the show because Gordon Ford, hopefully Gordon's going to be back on here very soon. Gordon has known him forever. When you get those coaches on like a Bob Marlin, John Brady, just put the mic in. As my friend Dan Matthews, executive producer of the Southern Sports Today, Chuck Oliver and Chuck and Chernoff, he says, Rob, just get the ball in the hands of the guests and let them run with it. And it's like get this banter we have. And sometimes there's 4, 5, 6 of us on here. And I feel like, Paul Lynn or whatever, Hollywood Squares, whoever that was. But I got Jonathan Winters up here and I got, but it's fun. But Schultz, you just, both of y'all are so right about, God, the basketball coaches. Bob Marlin, when he was on the show with us, and we had former Lee Hunt, who was Gordon's basketball coach at Ole Miss. These stories these guys can tell. Schultz, you're a young guy. We're all young. You can never hear enough of those stories. It's like, could you imagine what it'd be like to sit down and have a few drinks with Michelangelo if you were an artist? Say, what could you tell me? Can you tell me about being a better artist?
I mean, goodness.
I'm all ears. That's what it's like. I mean, Schultz, Bob Marlin.
Yeah, how do you paint upside down?
Yeah. When I went to the Sistine Chapel, I will never forget. I walked in and I was like, and my dad being an architect and an artist, spent 2.5 months on his honeymoon in Europe with my mom. He goes, boy, he was 36 years old when he did that. 36 years old. And, it is Bob Marlin. If he was on here, you just hand him the ball and just, wow. I mean, y'all are, and Schultz, Bob Marlin. I mean, these guys and you've got the relationships with them. And now you say the SEC doesn't need the exposure. You can never get enough of it because let's say the SEC were to go through a lean cycle. They're going to be calling in everybody.
Well, I don't know. What's a lean cycle? Not winning a championship 2 years in a row? That could be the lean cycle.
Yeah. Saban could not. If Saban doesn't win this year.
I got Mark Stoops. You couldn't do this with Nick Saban, right? I got Mark Stoops. My brother lives in Louisville. And so they're actually Louisville season ticket holders. And so my nephew is a big Louisville Cardinal fan. I got Mark Stoops to say hi to my nephew and say, go Cats, right? It took him all of 4 seconds. The whole process took like 10 seconds. And he laughed about it. And that was funny. You couldn't get Nick Saban to do that. You probably couldn't get Kirby Smart to do that. Some of these guys forget that this is fun, right? We're having fun. They're trying to get in and out of SEC media days as quickly as possible. And you're there for half a day. Deal with it and enjoy it. And, the Sunbelt guy, it's a long day for the Sunbelt guys. I'll tell you that. They're going all day long. In fact, the guys that Tim Beck, who I'm going to record here shortly, they were there first on Wednesday. I saw them talking to the Little Rock or the Jonesboro radio station. The Jonesboro radio station. I got a picture at 7:54 a.m. I didn't talk to the Coastal Carolina guys until 2:45. Just the way the schedule worked out. So that's a long time saying the same thing over and over and over again. And we appreciate their time. So, and I'm trying to get all these guys in before they're too busy. So hopefully I can get, I got half and hopefully I'll get the other half here. I'll send out another email to set more up for next week. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, look, I mean, that's what we're supposed to do. Let's take a quick break. I want to come back because the art of the interview, you got to go. Schultz got to go. Look, appreciate you staying on long with us as always, but tell them again how they can follow you and keep up with you and we'll go to the break.
At SchultzyCast, and please subscribe to Lockdown Sunbelt. I need 3 per day, 3 subscribers per day. I mean, we got Bo and Rob. That's 2. All right. So Lockdown Sunbelt in YouTube to get me to 500 by opening day. So we're hopefully going to do that. Lockdown Sunbelt in YouTube. You can also get it wherever you get your audio podcast as well. All right. See, they're going to subscribe right now. I'm going to be golden for the day.
I'm going to subscribe during the break. Okay. Schultz,
right.
we appreciate you taking time out of your Friday morning to join us. Always appreciate it. You're honest, you're frank, and you're one of the good ones. We love having you on here. We're going to take a quick break. Be right back with Bo Carter and Rob Browne.
A nicer bottle of bourbon, Rob, than the Hams beer. I got plenty of bourbon over here.
Hey, I'll take it, man. I'll take it. All right. We'll be right back after this quick break.
See you.
Take care. Whoa, 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 whoa. Here we go.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
Rob Browne back here with Bo Carter, and I am trying to do the Locked On Sunbelt, and I turned the thing on there, and you look at the how to subscribe to it, and it's right there. There we go. Share. That is share, subscribe. There we go. I just subscribed. Locked On Sunbelt. Man, that is so easy. Even Jethro Bodine and Otis Campbell can do it. Next challenge is, can Bob Browne Sr. do it? And I guarantee you he can. He can leap tall buildings in a single bound. Schultz cast. Here's some of it. See? Listen
you are Locked On Sunbelt, your daily podcast on the Sunbelt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I like that. And that is our man Schultz on there right there, Dave. Dave Schultz down in Lafayette, Louisiana. And you know what, Bo, and I want to say this real quick. Again, another thing about one of our sponsors, Hewlett & Dunn Boot and Clothing Company on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee. They got it all. Second largest Filson dealer in the southeastern United States of America. Okay. And they have got the biggest order ever of Filson apparel, luggage, hunting gear, casual gear on order. It should be coming in starting today and tomorrow. They've also got new brands like Pendleton, Schaefer Outdoors, Danner, Vask boots, light boots, and Hire boots. A little bit of trivia here, Bo Carter. Hire invented the cowboy boot. Charles Hall told me that. HewlettandDunn.com. That's HEWLETT. HewlettandDunn, DUNN.com. You can go online and see stuff, but if it doesn't even really scratch the surface. They've got over 7,000 pairs of men's and women's boots in there. They've got Devil Dog jeans. They've got Old South gear, Ariat, Stetson. Again, Filson everywhere. You name it. They're an Orca dealer. The selection and the clothing, rock mount shirts. I love these things. You know, I wore one of mine on the show, and I wore it to media days a couple of weeks ago in Nashville. Dave Schultz goes, I didn't know Salvador Dali was making shirts, and they're colorful. But Bob Dylan wears them. Ronald Reagan wore them. Elvis, I mean, you name the rock star, they wear rock mount shirts. The CEO died a couple of years ago. He was 107. 107, and I think he was still answering the phones. Maybe he retired at like 106. So an amazing story. Hewlett & Dunn on the historic square in Collierville, Tennessee, home of Audrey Ham, Mark Ham, all hams, calling all hams. All right, Ham's Beer in the background. You see the sign back there behind the Ham's Beer sign, Bo? It says, my goal in life is to become the kind of person my dog thinks I am.
Yeah, that's right.
Is this Jack Handy from Saturday Night Live? Deep
Yes. What a great.
You know, you think about that. We know, and you think about Larry Bud Millman meeting people on the Letterman show at the New York Transit Authority with new arrivals to town. Hello, ma'am. Where are you from? I'm from Orlando. Welcome to our fair city. I hope you enjoy yourself. You're smiling and you're happy before your dreams are crushed and broken and you're in ruins as this city breaks your heart. Would you care for a hot towel? Larry Bud, where did they get that guy?
I don't know.
From the nervous hospital?
Yeah, production assistant or the mental hospital, one of the two.
Yeah. Speaking of that, we were down at Alex's Tavern last night, 1445 Jackson Avenue in Memphis, the oldest continuously open tavern. The beer is so cold, you literally have to wear gloves to drink it. It's got ice on the outside. It's so cold, it lowers your body temperature by 10 degrees on impact. 6 giant flat screen TVs. The Greek burgers since 1953 made in the cast iron skillet. The Greek barbecued shrimp, the lemon pepper shrimp, the Greek ribs that even the Rendezvous are envious of. That's right, the Rendezvous. Oh, the Rendezvous. I'm sorry. But Alex's Tavern, the shuffleboard table, the jukebox with over 5,000 tunes, and the proprietor, Rocky Kasoftis. With a name like that, yep, no surprise. He's Irish. No, he's Greek. He is Greek, and amazing man. But down there last night with the big German and several of us, they're doing a documentary. They are doing the documentary and interviewing people and telling stories about, what's this place like. And basically my theme was everybody in here has celebrated at least 2 or 3 significant events in their lives by coming down here to the tavern. Live music, cold beer, football, the wings, the tenders, the hot wings, the burgers. You can't beat it. I love that place. I love a bar where you can go in there and the proprietor, Rocky, just don't say, if you want to get thrown out the door, say, hey, Rock, it's like Burgess Meredith. Come on, Rocky, you're a bum. You got nothing in you. You're soft. You're going to get killed. Apollo's going to wipe the floor with you. You got to toughen up, Rocky. Just say, good afternoon, Rocky. How are you? May I have a cold beer? Yvette and the legend, the late Sonny Wilson down there. Sonny had some of the greatest quotes of all time. Some of them were, Peoples is crazy. Memphis Steak is what he used to call Memphis Steak. Memphis Steak done beat up on a cripple team. And you got to knock his hicka loose. And someone came in there one time to order some beers at Alex's Tavern and said, I'd like a Miller Lite, I'd like a Coors Light, and I'd like a Bass Ale. And he goes, I'm sorry, we don't serve no fish. And they don't serve Ham's Beer either. But other than that, it's the greatest bar in the history of bars. And it's an incredible place. But I want to tell you something. Watching football, Bo, we're going to play write the story. You're writing a story right now. Don't you think it's important? And you know what I believe? We had Jason Gay from the Wall Street Journal on the show a few weeks ago. Great writer that Maury Gaston followed, and we had him on. He was up on the St. Lawrence River on the U.S.-Canada border, upstate New York, I think, with his 10-year-old and 8-year-old kids. He goes, oh, yeah, they're into fishing. They're not into iPads and all these things. They use them, but it's not the center of their universe. So you think about it, the great writers that are finding these stories out here. Norman Jetmanson, my friend, and David Cruz spent over 6 years to produce the documentary that was released in late April of 2022 in Birmingham, the center of the universe for college football. It really is. Called Sewanee 1899 Unrivaled. It spent 6 years and change to make that documentary. And it's unbelievable. And they were able to get Bobby Bowden before we lost him. Johnny Majors, Vince Dooley. So many great, Nick Saban, still here. He loves the film. Tony Barnhart spent a day with him in Atlanta to help. If I'm a football coach, the first night before we start practice, every coach in America, I recommend this. Get the DVD. Just go to Sewanee1899unrivaled.org and show that to your team. So they will appreciate what the men that came before them did to lay the foundation for what is college football. It's an incredible story. 5 wins in 6 days. And on the 7th day, they rested when they got back up on the mountain. Unbelievable.
It's better than Rocky to me, Rob. I tell you, remember that, Rocky or whatchamacallit, or Rudy and
come on, Bo, you're a bum. I'll get you.
That's right. But it's got to be the greatest football story of all time. And they I think it was in the documentary too, Rob. They were on a train and Sewanee was on a tight budget, so they would, if they saw an apple orchard, they'd stop the train. The players would pile off and steal apples, and they'd get back on and take off or whatever too. So they weren't on the high protein diet when they went on that trip.
As Johnny Carson would often say on the Tonight Show, I did not know that. I knew they did a lot of stuff, but it's so, that's fascinating. But that's the history of college football. And the more, if you don't know your history of why tradition is so big, history, traditions, heroes. Thank you, John Hearn, Robert Durham, Maury Gaston, Lee Parrott, all these great ones. They gave me that line. That's theirs, but I love it. If you don't know who these people were on the Sewanee team, if you don't know who the people were that brought football, like George Petrie, Dr. George Petrie, who brought football to Auburn from Charlottesville, Virginia in 1892. He brought the colors, orange, blue, and white. If you don't understand who, Emory Ballard is, Darrell K. Royal, the late Johnny Cooks, Mississippi State's Magic Man, Marty McDowell from Mobile. If you don't know who L.Q. Smith was, the 100-yard kick return in 1977 in the largest outdoor steam room in the world, Jackson, Mississippi's Memorial Stadium, to beat Notre Dame, you're not going to appreciate and fight for what you have now.
Or the Newton twins and David Langner, the famous Bama punt game.
Fayette, Alabama.
Just finishing that book. It's really good.
It is blocked. It is blocked. Caught on the run by Langner. Langner's going to score. Gusty Year out. He went crazy. Gary Sanders and Gusty Year out. I mean, how about that name? Gusty Year out.
Gusty Year out.
That's just as Southern as it gets. And one of the coolest names my wife has decided, I mean, I've got 4 kids. They all got names, but Huck. How about that name? Huck. Huck Carter.
Short for Huckleberry,
Are y'all going to the game tonight? Huck, yeah, you dang right we are. I love that name. Huckleberry. Remember Huckleberry Hound?
Exactly. Huckleberry Finn, the whole Mark Twain, the whole thing.
Great name. Bo, as a writer, there's you know what I see, and my Mallory said this. She's up here and over here on her way. They're leaving. She spent the night with us last night on the way up to Clarksville to see the mother-in-law, Granny, up in Clarksville, and they're leaving today. And I'll get up there sometime Saturday night. But she made a good point. Anyone over 72, 75 years old, when you read their obituaries, if they live into their 80s and 90s and 100. They're the most interesting people in the world. Amazing. And I'm referencing John Hull Dobbs, the great Hull. Love that man. Love that family. As good as it gets. Love him. And we had his funeral yesterday. We cut the show short. I've never done that before, but went over there for the service at Second Presbyterian Church, where I went to school for 8 years, spent a lot of time in that chat. Just an incredible celebration of that man's life. 91. Incredible man. But you read his obituary of his life story. It's absolutely incredible. incredible. I mean, and you think about the most interesting people. I want you to write a story for us right now, Bo. Here's the assignment, and you're going to play it out right now. We got a lot of listeners all over the country, all over the world. We're on Al Gore's interwebs, interwebs. Okay. And before I would say the people that are out there, they're buying into all this negativity. Throw it out the window. Bo, you remember the things that we have been through in your life. I remember what I've seen so far, and there's a lot more to come. It's just another pothole in the road of life. Get people fired up, write a story and says, contrary to what you may be buying into, because it's so damn easy to be negative, but it takes a lot of effort to be positive. Tell people what I believe and you believe. I believe you believe it. Conceive it, believe it, achieve it. College football, the product on the field is as good as it's ever been, and how the free market and the fans will fix NIL in the portal, because you're already seeing it. Young kids are saying the portal's where you go if you're not ready. I'm ready. I'm ready. I feel great, but tell that story to us. Just write it right now, live TV.
Just briefly, I'll do the best I can. Briefly, you hear so many people, young football players these days say, well, I know the portal's out there. Somebody offered me $1.5 million to transfer, but I owe it to my teammates. I signed a letter of intent with these guys out of high school. I might go. The money is tempting, but I'm on this team. That's kind of the way Alabama and Auburn. If you talk to their players extensively, they'll say, "Hey, we love the school. We've got maybe fathers and grandfathers who went to school, third generation football players, et cetera, et cetera." And I could imagine Pat Sullivan taking our late great friend taking money to transfer to Notre Dame, even the good Catholic guy he was, but he wouldn't.
Irish Catholic,
wouldn't take $1 million to leave Auburn and go to Notre Dame. So you've got the rivalries. College football's obviously the best sport there is. You've got the natural rivalries. You've got the bands, tailgates, anything you want to name. The people, the fun things people do, putting caskets in other people's yard after they beat them the night before in football or whatever. Burning a rebel flag in the bank of Mississippi in Tupelo or whatever too. But it's just there are millions and millions of stories plus. And Rob, I'm still a strong believer in the student athlete. I know that you see people taking basket weaving and different. They laugh about the different courses, but you've got guys that are like your dad, architects, engineers, people that come out and leave college, get a master's degree or whatever, go to work, become a president of Bristol. Look at he didn't play college football, but look at the chairman of Apple, who's an Auburn guy or whatever too. It's just the education you get there too. The guy that invented Wikipedia, Jimmy Wales, what a good Auburn. I'm pointing out all these Auburn connections for you.
Well, but look,
it's a story written every day in every media.
It is, and you think about, you pick the school anywhere out there. Again, it's easy to get caught up in all the negativity and the BMW culture that we live in today. Bitching, moaning, whining.
That's right.
Okay. Don't buy into that crap. Okay. I'm going to tell you what, Eddie Murphy, my friend, the EdMurphyClassic.com. It starts today, 1:00, Rhodes College, 83 Olympians, people from all over the world coming in. They're going to try to make it the second biggest track and field event in America, right behind what goes on in Eugene, Oregon. Steve Prefontaine made that happen, and a lot of other people, but he got it started. But Eddie said one of the quotes of the year so far on Sidelines. He said, look, man, a lot of these people that are wrapped up in the red, white, and blue love this country, United States of America, and a lot of people do. Contrary, you turn on the TV, you're going to see some jackass complaining about America and running down the country of the flag. There's two lists that right now I have a 0 on. One of them with the 0 is the number of people I've ever known in my life who have renounced their American citizenship and moved out of this country. Okay. As much as they may bitch and moan, I don't hang around them very long if they're like that. They don't ever give it up because this is the greatest country in the history of the world. That's a short book I've got. Okay. And the other one is negative pessimists who are successful entrepreneurs. heard Devant Latham say this yesterday at Mr. Dobbs' funeral. He said, pessimism never contributes to a successful entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
And that was John Dobbs. I mean, he was positive, positive, positive. His father started, necessity is the mother of all invention. And so negative people who've risen to the top is a zero, and people who renounce their make. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world.
Yep.
What is going on in this country right now is, we need to be reconnecting, because people, when I'm out among people, Bo, man, I'm gonna find something good to say about everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. There's no doubt about it.
And that as an SID. I mean, you were doing it 74 to 86 at Starkville. You still have strong relationships with people everywhere you've ever been. That's not an accident.
Mm-hmm. And it's the old glass half full, glass half empty deal. You've got to, especially when you're in a place like Mississippi State or Vanderbilt, and even sometimes Auburn's had great success for the most part of the way.
The last 3 years, not so much.
I know. That's okay. It's like
we're wandering in the wilderness. Help me, please. Help me, please.
It's like
my Elizabeth, this is a big one.
The one of the great examples, very quick, I know we're running close to the end, but the late, great Bob Hartley in the College Sports Communicator Hall of Fame used to tell me, he said, well, we might have gone 2-8 last year, but we had a good punter and we had an offensive lineman that was going to get drafted. He said, I'm going to push those guys really hard for all SEC. And darn if he probably got 30 guys, all Southeastern Conference or second team or honorable mention, just because, they needed a Mississippi State guy or a Vanderbilt guy on there just to sort of, along with the 8 Alabama and Auburn guys were first teams. So it's all in perspective. It's all the perspective.
Well, and another thing too is when you go to a game and, there's people in the luxury boxes, there's people that have scholarship seats, and then there's just people who are sacrificing way more than they may want to admit just to go to a game. If you've got season tickets and you're not going to the game, give them to somebody that maybe, can't afford it. Or they're just at a stage in their life. You will be surprised. You won't be surprised. It'll really warm your heart to see what it does to those people. A kind word, a kind gesture. But boy, you get somebody. Remember the stories we used to read about guys like Bobby Humphrey selling Cokes at Legion Field in Birmingham.
Yeah.
Well, he ended up playing at Legion Field in Birmingham. And, so many across the country stories like that. Still to this day, there's no better game to attend in person than baseball, because you can kick back and, and have a hot dog, Frankfurter. That's a debate. What do we call it? But, then there's the Metroplex or the greater Dallas-Fort Worth area. Those are debates. What would Brother Theodore say? I think, Dave, you're asking a question, but there's no answer. Why do you ask me about what is the Metroplex? By the way, Sergeant Schultz, one of the greatest episodes ever the other night, he was the head of the Shotzi Toy Company. And when they faked that the war had ended, Colonel Klink was going, you think you could get me a job there? Could you get a job? He goes, I believe so. I own the company. He goes, oh, Schultz. Great story. Schultz, I don't know what his time was in the 40, but it was probably not 4-4. But I'm looking around. We just got a couple of minutes. The future of college football, Bo, every chance you get, you spend time with aspiring writers, don't you?
Yeah, pretty much. And like you're saying too, the NIL, and Dave hit it on the head. Dave Schultz a while ago. The NIL and the transfer portal are going to work. I think. I don't know whether it's going to be national legislation or whatever. I don't. What was it? Trust me, I'm here to help you. The famous words
from the government. From the government.
No.
The 9 words you don't want to hear.
It's at some point. It has a little bit now. You've got stuff. The Miami thing is kind of exploding on them down there, and a few things are going on. So, I think the kids are going to see, hey, this is a little bit pie in the sky, and I really need to if I made a commitment to Ole Miss or Vanderbilt or Memphis or whatever, I need to stay with this thing unless it's a family hardship or a parent dies or whatever too. But I can see that. But it's and the NCAA used to make they would have the hardship case where if one of the parents died or they had to go, a parent had cancer or fatal disease, they could transfer back to another school and be close to their family. So, I mean, they've got to have that provision, I think.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because as having been in that side of college athletics, how important it is. And I'll just close this by saying we all know people that were stars. Some of us do. We both do. And some that were on the scout team as a blocking dummy with a pulse. But you know what? They got that letter. They got that degree. It ain't what you start, it's what you finish.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And I know my brother-in-law played college football for Virginia Tech, 73 to 76. He wasn't a superstar or anything like that, but he built over 40 plus years, one hell of a career as a trust officer in banking at Dominion Bank and then First Union and now Wells Fargo and all. Rick Law, Rich Creek, Virginia, right up on that West Virginia, Virginia border. 5 kids in that family. His parents grew up in the mountains up there, all went to college. Every damn one of them graduated.
Amazing.
You think football and sports don't make a difference? We had Eddie Robinson III on the show last week. God, that's one of the great. Next time we get him on, you got to be on with him.
I look forward to it.
You talk about a first-class, humble guy. And he's still carrying on the legacy of his father. I mean, there's so many great stories in college football. Another cup of coffee, man. We'll be here till tomorrow night. But we run out of time. Unbelievable show as always. Thanks to all of our sponsors and our listeners. Most often, we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Think about that, folks. Never forget to give back and help people who help you along the way. Great people like our guests, our sponsors, and everybody. Bo Carter, tag out. Let them know how they can follow you. And we'll do this again tomorrow morning, bright and early. But, Bo, let them know.
Thanks,
Bo knows.
Bo knows. At Bo Carter 52 on Twitter and also sportspagedfw.com, a couple other places. Just Google and you'll find me, I think.
Hey, you will. And reading is like lifting weights with your brain. Get to work, gentlemen. We'll see you tomorrow. And ladies, out of here. Take care. So long. We're out of here.